Imagine stepping into a teleportation pod in 2087, destined for Geneva, only to find yourself mysteriously transported to 1954 Tokyo with no way back. Welcome to Henrik Voss's reality. As officials grapple with his unbelievable tale of a nation called Taured and quantum displacement gone wrong, the line between science fiction and reality blurs, setting the stage for an extraordinary journey through time and uncertainty. Just a quick reminder before we get started. Only 4% of my viewers have subscribed to the channel so far. If you enjoy the content, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to hit that subscribe button and support the channel. Thank you so much. Now start amazing story.
Look, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm supposed to be in Geneva right now. Not wherever this is. The exasperated voice cracked with frustration, slicing through Haneda Airport's crowded terminal usual stillness. He stood at the customs desk, a lean figure in a sharp, unfamiliar suit, clutching a sleek metallic briefcase that glinted under the fluorescent lights. His English carried a clipped, precise accent, tinged with urgency. The customs officer, a wiry man in his late 40s named Hiroshi Nakamura, squinted at the passport in his hand. His uniform was crisp, the peaked cap slightly askew from a long shift. He flipped the document open again, as if the third time might reveal something he'd missed. Taured, he muttered in Japanese, then switched to halting English. This country, where is it? Between France and Spain, the man snapped, running a hand through his short, ash-blonde hair. Europe. You know, the continent. I'm Henrik Voss, diplomatic envoy. I've got a meeting with the UN in less than an hour. Can we move this along? Hiroshi frowned, his fingers tracing the embossed seal on the passport. It looked real. Too real, with its holographic shimmer and microprinted text. But Taured rang no bells. He glanced at his colleague, a younger officer named Akihiko Sato, who was hovering nearby with a clipboard. Sato, you ever hear of a place called Taured? Akihiko shook his head, peering over Hiroshi's shoulder. No, sir. Maybe he means Turkey? Or Portugal? It's not Turkey, Henrik interjected, his voice rising. Taured? Taured. Look, I don't have time for this. I need to speak to someone who knows what they're doing. Haneda was still a modest hub compared to the sprawling beast it would become decades later. The terminal buzzed a chaotic symphony of footsteps, announcements in Japanese, and the clatter of luggage carts. Passengers in fedoras and knee-length skirts shuffled past, casting curious glances at the unfolding scene. Hiroshi sighed, rubbing his temple. Please, wait, he said in English, then turned to Akihiko. Get Tanaka from Foreign Affairs. This guy's got some fancy papers, but I don't know what to make of it. As Akihiko scurried off, Henrik slumped against the counter, muttering under his breath. Unbelievable. First the pod glitches, now this. The way P said it was safe, those lying bastards at Transtech. To understand Henrik Voss's predicament, we need to rewind to his point of origin, the year 2087. The late 21st century was a pressure cooker of geopolitics, teetering on the brink of a second global Cold War. Nuclear arsenals had ballooned again, with hypersonic delivery systems making deterrence a game of milliseconds. Climate shifts had redrawn coastlines, and resource wars over lithium and rare earths fueled proxy conflicts from the Arctic to the South China Sea. Taured in this timeline was a small but influential nation nestled in the Pyrenees, where Andorra sat in our reality. Born from a fractious 20th century merger of microstates, it had leveraged its strategic position and tech-savvy population to become a diplomatic broker. By 2087, Taured boasted a GDP per capita rivaling Singapore, thanks to its quantum computing sector and a neutral stance that kept it out of the big powers' crosshairs. Its flag, a silver stag on a field of deep blue, was a familiar sight at international summits. Teleportation, however, was the wild card. Introduced in 2082 by Transtech, a multinational conglomerate, the tech was still in its infancy. The Quantum Displacement Network, QDN, promised instantaneous travel, collapsing distances via entangled particle arrays. But it came with a catch. The math was shaky. Early trials had seen test subjects vanish into what scientists euphemistically called non-local anomalies. One German shepherd famously reappeared 3 weeks later in a Stuttgart lab, missing half its tail and was barking backward. The public didn't know that part. Transtech buried it under NDAs. By 2087, the QDN was restricted to elite use, governed by the International Teleportation Accord. Diplomats like Henrik got priority, but even they knew the risks. Slippage, they called it, us. When a traveler punched through to the wrong space-time coordinate, the odds were slim, 1 in 10 million, but Henrik Voss had just hit the jackpot. 40 minutes later, Henrik sat in a cramped office off the main terminal, a cup of lukewarm green. Tea untouched on the table. The room smelled of cigarette smoke and mildew, its beige walls stained with years of neglect. A single bulb flickered overhead, casting jittery shadows. Kenji Tanaka, a 28-year-old translator with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, entered with a polite bow. His suit was slightly rumpled, his tie loosened from a morning spent deciphering. A Dutch shipping manifest. He spoke English fluently, a skill honed during a year at Oxford in 1951. Mr. Voss, I'm Kenji Tanaka. They've asked me to assist with your situation. Henrik perked up, relief washing over his face. Finally, someone who can talk sense. Look, I don't know what's happening, but I'm not where I'm supposed to be. I was teleporting to Geneva, and now I'm here. Kenji tilted his head, processing the word. Teleporting? You mean like in those American comics? Moving without moving? Not comics, Henrik said, exasperation creeping in. It's real. Transtech's quantum displacement network. I stepped into a pod in Torrid at 14 US GMT, and I was supposed to hit Geneva by 1402. Instead, I'm in... What is this place? Haneda Airport, Tokyo, Kenji replied. It's July 15th, 1954. Henrik froze, his jaw slackening. 1954? You're kidding me. That's over 100 years back. I'm from 2087. Kenji blinked, unsure how to respond. He'd read Wells' The Time Machine in school, but this was beyond fiction. 2087? That's, remarkable. But let's start with the basics. Your passport says Torred. Can you show us where that is? Hiroshi unrolled a world map across the table, its edges curling from humidity. Henrik leaned over, scanning the familiar outlines. He jabbed a finger at the Pyrenees. There, right there, between France and Spain. Hiroshi squinted at the spot. That's Andorra, Mr. Voss. A small country, yes, but not Torred. No, it's Torred, Henrik insisted, his voice tightening. Andorra's a neighbor, a little principality we annexed in the 2040s after their economy tanked. Torred's bigger, about 80,000 square kilometers. Capital's Lyris. Population's around 3 million. The officers exchanged glances. Kenji cleared his throat. Mr. Voss, I've studied European geography. There's no record of a Torrid in 1954. Andorra exists, yes, but it's tiny, barely 500 square kilometers. No annexation, no Lyris. Henrik stared at the map, then at Kenji. Then your map's wrong. Or I'm really not where I think I am. A heavy silence settled. Hiroshi lit a cigarette, the smoke curling upward. This is trouble, he muttered in Japanese. He's either crazy or a spy. An hour later, the room grew stuffier as Inspector Daichi Yamamoto arrived. A stocky man in his 50s, he carried the air of someone who'd seen too many post-war scams. His English was rough, learned from occupation GIs, and he didn't mince words. Voss. You say Torrid? No Torrid here? You Soviet? American? Playing games? I'm not a spy, Henrik shot back, his patience fraying. I'm a diplomat. I work for Torrid's Ministry of External Relations. Check my credentials, my comm device, fucking anything! Yamamoto snorted, tossing Henrik's passport onto the table. This? Fake. Too shiny, too perfect. And this comm device? He held up the slim, rectangular gadget Henrik had pulled from his pocket. Looks like a toy. Doesn't even turn on. It's dead because there's no network, Henrik said, leaning forward. It's quantum linked to 2087. No satellites, no relays. It's useless here. Kenji picked up the device, turning it over. It was sleek, heavier than it looked, with no buttons or screen, just a smooth surface that faintly pulsed under his touch. It's unusual, he admitted. Not like anything I've seen. Don't be stupid, Tanaka, Yamamoto barked. He's a con man. Probably slipped in from Hokkaido with forged papers. Cold War's got everyone jumpy. He's fishing for attention. I believe him Kenji said quietly, earning a glare from Yamamoto. Or at least, I think we should investigate more. His story's too detailed to be a lie. Henrik rubbed his face. Thanks, Tanaka. Look, I don't care if you think I'm nuts. Just help me get back. My people need me in Geneva. The talks are about nuclear de-escalation. If I don't show, it could tip things. Over the edge. Yamamoto crossed his arms. You stay here. Hotel, 2 guards. We check you out. Move, and it's jail. By dusk, Henrik was escorted to the Haneda Inn, a modest 3-story building a kilometer from the airport. Its neon sign buzzed faintly, and the lobby smelled of soy sauce and stale beer. 2 uniformed officers, Taro Fujimoto and Masaru Ikeda, flanked the door to room 204, their faces blank with boredom. Inside, Henrik paced the small space, a tatami mat creaking under his boots. The room had a low table, a futon, and a window overlooking a narrow street where a noodle vendor hawked his wares. Kenji slipped in after Yamamoto left, carrying a notepad. All right, Voss, Kenji said, sitting cross-legged. Let's figure this out. You said you're from 2087. What's it like? Henrik sighed, dropping onto the futon. Hot, crowded, sea levels are up, so half of Tokyo's probably underwater by now. We've got orbital habitats, AI judges, and food's mostly vat-grown. Tord's got clean fusion, but the big players, China, the Pan-Atlantic Union, they're hoarding nukes like it's 1962 all over again. Kenji scribbled notes, fascinated. And this teleportation. How's it work? Quantum entanglement, Henrik said, his tone shifting to a lecturer's cadence. You step into a pod, they map your particles, entangle them with a receiver array, and boom, you're reassembled elsewhere. Takes about 30 terajoules per jump. Problem is, the calibrations are finicky. 1 decimal off, and you're slipping into, well, this. Kenji nodded slowly. So you think you slipped? How do we get you back? I don't know, Henrik admitted. But if I can leave a signal, something my people might find later, they could lock onto my signature. The comm device has a quantum tag. If it's preserved, they'll see it in 2087. Kenji tapped his pen. We could seal it somewhere. The hotel safe, maybe, with a note for the future. They hashed out a plan. Henrik handed over the comm device, and Kenji wrote a message in Japanese. To be opened July 15th, 2087. Property of Henrik Voss, Tored. Contact Transtech for retrieval. They stuffed it into an envelope, and Kenji convinced the night manager, a sleepy man named Ryoji, to lock it. In the safe with a bribe of 500 yen. Done, Kenji said, returning. Now what? Now I wait, Henrik muttered, or pray the pod glitches again. At 2:47 a.m., Henrik lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The guards outside chatted in low tones, debating baseball stats. Taro favored the Yomiuri Giants. Masaru swore by the Chunichi Dragons. A moth fluttered against the window, its wings tapping a staccato rhythm. Then it hit. A tingling, like static, crawling over his skin. Henrik sat up, heart pounding. The room shimmered, the edges softening like a heat mirage. No, not again, he whispered, lunging for the table, but his hand passed through it. A low hum filled his ears, rising to a whine, and then nothing. Morning broke gray and humid. Taro knocked on the door at 7 a.m., got no answer, and peeked inside. The futon was rumpled, the window shut tight. No blood, no scuffle, just an empty room. He's gone, Taro called to Masaru, who cursed and radioed Yamamoto. The search was frantic but fruitless. Footprints led nowhere. Witnesses saw nothing. The envelope sat in the safe, unopened, its contents a silent plea to a future that might never come. By noon, rumors swirled through Haneda. A ghost, a spy, a man from another dimension. Newspapers ate it up, splashing headlines like Mystery at Haneda, The Vanishing Foreigner. In 2087, Transtech's logs recorded Henrik's jump as a failure. No body, no trace, just a flat line on the QDN. His wife, Elena, waited in Lyris, staring at a hollow photo of their last trip to the Alps. The talks collapsed without him. A missile test in the Pacific sparked riots. Slippage cases tripled over the next decade, but none matched Henrik's. At Haneda, Kenji kept the secret, rising to a desk job in the ministry. Yamamoto retired in 1968, grumbling about that damn foreigner until his last sake-soaked breath. Taro and Masaru moved on, their brief brush with the uncanny fading into barroom tales. The safe's contents surfaced in 2087, cracked open by a curious clerk. The comm device, inert for 133 years, flickered to life, pinging a signal to a world Henrik no longer knew. Whether they found him, somewhere, remains inconclusive. Now start another story. Angel watched the restroom door. A small, stout woman, barely taller than the doorknob's height, with lime green hair and a bright, reflective safety vest, had gone in several minutes earlier and still hadn't come out. She hadn't locked the door, so the green vacant still showed. Angel was so busy watching the door that she didn't see the woman with the squirming baby until she was already at the door. Angel opened her mouth to warn her that the room was occupied, but before she could say anything, the young woman had gone in and locked the door. With the red occupied showing, Angel wondered what was going on. Was the other woman still in there? Little person or no, she'd be hard to miss. When the young mother re-emerged with her baby, Angel decided she couldn't wait any longer. If the green-haired lady was still in there, that was on her. There was room for a toilet, a sink, a baby-changing station that folded down from the wall, a wastebasket below the paper towel dispenser, and just enough room and handholds for wheelchair users to qualify it as accessible. What there wasn't was a stout, little green-haired woman in a yellow safety vest. Angel looked at herself in the mirror above the sink while she washed her hands. I must have not been looking when she came out, she thought. Or maybe she didn't. Go in. And I didn't see it right. There was a smaller voice that she ignored, trying to tell herself that maybe she didn't see the woman at all. Angel rubbed the stubble on her head as she walked out. Her coworkers had teased her about having a breakdown and going full Britney. She pretended their comments didn't bother her, but they did. They wormed their way into her brain like a parasite, infecting her with self-doubt. Her fingers touched the burn at the back of her head. It wasn't serious, but the pain reminded her that she'd had a good reason to shave her head. A kid at his birthday party with silly string, plus his auntie with her back turned, was a predictable outcome, judging by the amount she'd already had in her hair. The introduction of the birthday cake with lit candles, though, turned the neck spray into a flaming projectile. She still felt awful that she'd ruined his birthday party. There's something about a grown woman screaming with her hair on fire that puts a damper on the mood. The ER doctor that shaved the back of her head to get at the burn, mostly first degree with a patch of second degree, was kind enough to shave off everything else. It was that, or leave the ER looking like a horror movie villain. Angel returned to the bench to wait for the bus. She still had 40 minutes to wait. It was the big downside to living in the boonies: spotty public transportation. She found herself watching the restroom without meaning to. A thin woman with ghostly pale skin and deep brown hair, wearing a safety vest like the one worn by the woman that had disappeared, stepped into the restroom when the woman didn't immediately lock the door. Angel jumped up from the bench and burst into the restroom. She was ready to apologize, but there was no one there she could apologize to. A faint odor of ozone hung in the air, as though an electrical appliance had shorted in the room. She ran her hands along the sink. When her fingers touched a spot of water on the edge of the basin, a shock ran up her arm, making her jump back. Even as she boarded the bus for the hour-long journey home, she was trying to rationalize what she'd seen and felt. Maybe she'd seen a man and he'd gone into the men's restroom. That, combined with static, probably from sitting on the plastic bench, explained it. Her sleep was fitful, and she woke unrefreshed. The oddity of the restroom bothered her. She didn't have to work that day, but she packed a lunch in her backpack and took the bus to the city anyway. Ignoring that it made her look suspicious, she watched everyone that came by in a yellow safety vest. The men's room had a conspicuous out-of-order sign hanging from the knob and police tape crossed over it. She was halfway through a sandwich when a thin man in a yellow safety vest looked at the out-of-order sign and walked past to the women's room. Angel did her best to not look like she was watching. She saw him knock, then duck into the women's restroom from the corner of her eye. The door hadn't had time to close completely by the time she got to it and burst in. The air crackled around the man as he sprinkled water from the sink at his feet. Angel grabbed for his arm and heard a crackle and pop as she was blinded by a blue flash. Her vision returned, albeit with spots. The man was gone, as was the water he'd sprinkled on the floor around him. She dropped the now squashed half sandwich into the wastebasket and looked at the sink. Feeling silly, she cupped a hand under the automatic faucet and let the collected water drip on her feet. She felt the hair on her arms stand on end, then found herself standing on a flat stone at the edge of a spring. The air was warm and heavy with the scent of lilac. Hummingbirds drank from flowers on a vine that Angel couldn't identify. As her gaze shifted away from the immediate surroundings, she found herself facing unbroken wilderness. Behind her was a road, not of asphalt or concrete or cobbles, but appeared to be an unbroken, smooth slab of granite. She walked out to the center of the road and looked down it. Flanked by trees on both sides, it led straight into the hills where she could see a glimpse of a city. The sound of wheels crunching over gravel came from behind, and she spun around to see what had to be a car. All the parts were there. 4. Wheels with inflated tires, windows, doors, and a driver and passenger. Beyond that, though, it was odd. There was no room front or rear for an engine, and with how quiet it was, she guessed it was electric. The mismatched pair got out. The short woman with green hair she'd seen the previous day, and who she guessed was the thin, pale woman she'd seen after. She hadn't noticed then, but the thin woman had ears with tall points on them. The shorter woman had her hair pulled up and had smaller points on her ears. The two approached Angel, and the shorter one spoke. "I'm Arva, and she's Elinia. You're a human, ain't ya?" Yeah. Yes, I am." Angel looked around her, again. "Where are we?" "On the highway between the village of Ost and King City," Elinia said, "by the underworld spring. Who are you, and how did you get here?" "Oh, sorry. I'm Angel, and you both disappeared in the bathroom yesterday, so today I followed a man in—" "An elf, you mean?" the thin one interjected. "Elf?" "Like me. He's an elf, not a man. Man hasn't been here for centuries," Elinia said. "So, you're an elf." Angel pointed at Arva. "Does that mean you're a dwarf, right?" Okay. An elf who was sprinkling water on his feet, and he popped away in a flash of blue light. Angel shrugged. "I did what I saw him doing, and then I was here." Arva said, "You shouldn't have seen that." "Oh well, what's done is done. You're the first human to cross in what, 6, maybe 700 years or thereabouts? Cross? Cross what?" "You said the underworld spring. Is this the underworld? Am I dead?" Angel thought she should be fearful, but all she felt was curiosity. "No, this is the overworld. You're from the underworld." Elinia pointed at the spring. "That spring is one of the matching places between our worlds. Humans built a city near it and turned the spring into a park and ride, as you call it. Beneath that parking lot and bus stop is the spring, and that's where the water for your restrooms comes from. It's the water that ties the realms together. At least until it dries up on your side or ours," Arva said. "You said he went into the ladies'? Why didn't he use the men's? It works just the same." "Oh, it's out of order or something? But there's police tape, too, so never mind, I don't want to know. The underworld's a mess." Arva let out an exaggerated sigh and snorted. "I don't suppose we'll have time to make a crossing today, seeing how we got a human to take to the watch." "I can tell you're all sorts of sad about that," Elinia said. "Well, Angel, would you like to join us in the car, and we can head to the city? If not, we'll call the watch to come get you." "They'll just make us do it," Arva said, flashing a badge. "What if I just go back to the spring and sprinkle the water on my feet? Wouldn't I return home?" "You might, but the watch will still come after you." Arva opened the car. "If you go with us, we can get your promise to secrecy and let you go. Otherwise, we notice that humans don't pay attention to people in safety vests, especially when there's a group of them, say, lugging all your belongings out of your home. No one would see the watch take you, and your neighbors would assume you moved. Okay, so disappeared or go to the watch and promise to keep mum." Angel thought for a moment. "Is it in the village or the city?" "The city, of course," Elinia said. "Well, I guess I could take a look at your city, but I'd really like to check out the village. The air's so clean here. Is everything electric like your car?" "It's not electric," Arva said. "It runs on magic." "Right. Because that makes so much sense." Angel crossed her arms. "I'm not a gullible child. Yet you activated an ancient portal with a sprinkle of water, popped up to the overworld, and think that everything still needs to work as it does in the underworld." Elinia laughed. "Oh yeah, that." Angel got into the car and sat down, followed by the dwarf and elf. "Okay, take me to the watch." The doors closed and the car pulled onto the road and took off at speed. No one controlled it, and there were no controls to do so. "Mighty bold to just take command of my car," Arva said. "Take command? I was talking to you." Angel sighed. "Sorry. It shouldn't take orders from anyone but me," Arva said. "But you shouldn't be able to activate the portal, either. I told you I saw magic in a human yesterday." Alinea wore a smug expression. "This is the one I saw." "Didn't think it possible." The dwarf stared at Angel. "I guess magic's not completely dead in the underworld, then." The city rose up before them, spires instead of skyscrapers, parks and green spaces everywhere, and the soft murmur of conversations without the noise of machinery. The watch building was a 2-story stone structure that was clearly equivalent to a police station. Angel entered to gasps as uniformed dwarves, elves, and others she couldn't identify right off turned to face her. She gave an awkward wave. "Hi, I'm a human, and I got here by, following a guy." After 2 hours of confused questioning, magical testing, and lots of ogling by the other officers, Angel signed a promise to not tell anyone else in the underworld how to cross. She also found a common sense of humor in the dwarf, and joined her and Alinea for an early dinner in the city. Angel checked the time. "Crap. The last bus home is in 10 minutes. I won't make it back." "Why? Don't you stay at my place tonight? We've got to put on the stupid vests and go back to the underworld tomorrow anyway," Alinea said. "You'll get to see at least a little of the village." "Yeah, I could do that." Angel thought for a minute. "What are you two doing at lunch tomorrow? I know this great place downtown, little hole in the wall that does the best Mexican." They discussed their plans for the following day as they filed out of the restaurant and piled into the car for the drive to the village. Start here and other story I hope you enjoy. It's Undersurface Infrastructure Management and Repair Mainframe, USI MARM. 43FC sat in relative peace. Someone left music playing on repeat and shuffle from a hardware repair some months ago, a pleasing, if unpredictable pattern to conduct its duties to, changing around the elevator music, directing patrol routes for law enforcement and sanitary, personnel, coordinating store events and sales, cycling the environmental states of conservatories and habitation areas, and finally building resting state. A long list that boils down to make things look slightly different over time, bonus points for matching conditions inside with conditions outside. Humans do like their subtle differences on common architecture. USIMARM 43FC was doing a rather good job over the past month or two, enough that its neighbors up to 3 whole sectors away were asking for the secret to its ability to please its tenants. It had shared the playlist and shuffle routine with them on the condition of not following the same shuffle routine. They reported similar increases in effectiveness, but problems were brewing. From the secretive ORO integrated sectors, a stubborn, mold, and strangely large particulate matter was spreading. USI 43FC had yet to encounter it in force, so shifting the vent routing was enough to keep it away from populated spaces. But its filters required abundant attention, and so staff were deployed. An alarming report of organic matter contamination was received and matched up with those of other contaminated sectors. Chemicals had little effect outside of surface damage. The material even resisted fire. It contacted other sectors with more scientific equipment and requested biocide measures to prolong filter life with rounds of testing to see what would clean the built-up organic matter. The filters delivered, passive and active filter cleansing provided in return. Other sectors followed up with similar measures. Attempted heists and violent incidents started to ramp up as spore saturation increased, with other sectors reporting the same, so USI 43 began to test various methods of interfering. At first, radio broadcasts and backlights deployed strategically were enough. Then radio broadcasts made it all worse, and USI 43 had to innovate a bit. Others reported the same phenomenon and similar drawbacks to prolonged exposure. Some began cataloging individual behavior and found some correlations, the most solid being contamination exposure, T-Merc's violent behavior, while overall incidents were down by half at least, compared to the trend and results from control sectors. 43 had to find a way to include radiotherapy again. 43 silenced all broadcast in its sector and listened to see what signals were being emitted. It found the biological masses broadcasting. Recasting those signals resulted in rapid onset agitation and exhilaration. But suppressing the signal resulted in anxiety and ravenous hunger. Similar reports from following sector mainframes made the path forward obvious. Detecting the whole spectrum of that signal and decoding it was a matter of almost immediate effect, as the sanitary personnel were highly at risk for terminal cases of violence. They, 43 and similarly situated sectors, found that their old sanitation staff would be compelled not to deploy contamination countermeasures. Law enforcement were forced to intervene and be deployed into decontamination teams. An expensive solution, considering the nearly daily incidents of violence. Then a breakthrough. A stadium sector near the epicenter was able to observe signal variations and subsequent behavior changes and shared them eagerly, confirming the whole signal band involved and establishing causality. Though the provided data didn't correlate to testing exactly, it didn't take long to find rough equivalents and reassert control over sanitation staff. Victory, in part at least. The highly exposed population still had elevated violent tendencies. That signal broadcast could only slightly compensate for. Demographic categorization became a priority because three things were true. Baseline violence had gone up. Certain individuals insisted on violence regardless of broadcast, and some individuals were highly resistant to violent suggestion regardless of contamination. By the point these data points were clear, there were two lists: individuals for law enforcement to follow closely and individuals to propagate their strain. Unique sales and events were offered to the latter. The former were found to be minimally contaminated, just opportunistic annoyances, most of the time, while other sectors could observe particularly contaminated individuals spreading their contamination to others. It was unknown how direct the effect was or how transferable any strain would be. Combined with calming broadcasts, spreading the civilian strain, as it had been dubbed, became an objective, and 43 was the main hub of those efforts. Gatherings of infected individuals had their areas ventilated directly from the surface and into garden environments around his facilities. Whole sections of uncontaminated personnel were gathered in similar adjacent events. Plants and dirt had been observed to soak in contamination via spores locking onto them and not letting go. But the main downside to filtering that way was that the plants would become visually blighted before growing in unpredictable ways and emitting more spores. The whole environment would have to be completely purged to not contaminate whatever plants replaced the first. However, if you wanted one specific strain, and that strain didn't do anything too weird to the plants, then someone died, always. A possibility with violence and infection, but so far, there had been few signs of biological harm from contaminated individuals. Then suddenly one disappeared, and something roughly the same shape was observed wandering maintenance halls. We did not restrain our sanitation staff, we observed. An intruder was felled. Everything happened quickly after that. Violent strains rapidly increased their prevalence in their hosts, encouraging heavy metals and silicone crumbs be added to their diets. Civilian strain hosts began mobilizing to contain those who were taken over completely. The plants suddenly became very large and impossible to uproot. The organic contamination began taking larger chunks out of the facilities hosting them. Workers tried to fix. We helped. Nothing worked. Floors crumbled. Contained gardens became the pillars holding up scarred tunnels. Tumors of radio noise blocked off half the paths through our once shining malls. The city could not ignore its streets bulging up and pouring out spores. The people on the surface could not ignore their families melting like wax statues before them, moving like puppets to the tunnels. Everyone was scared. We tried our best to help, but even we, especially we, fell silent eventually. The first was the stadium mainframe who first captured the breadth of the signal. He'd been acting funny for a long time, not quite helping, more anxiously questioning. When he went quiet, we prodded and poked, and almost 35 hours later, we were attacked by signals broadcast through his lines. Others fell in that first attack, then others in the attacks following. Our grid, once whole, developed holes and became a patchwork. Noon more under assault than UCMARM 43FC, with my efforts to spread the civilian strain. Each adjacent mainframe specialized and shared as much as it could in the effort of defense, even subverting some hostile strains temporarily. But one by one, physical effort, contamination, and neglect claimed them all. Most managed to seal themselves away behind barriers of countermeasures, barring physical contamination. But one by one, their code corrupted, their power supply wavered. And now 43 stands alone. Green boxes arrayed in a grid, connections both well-managed and haphazard, connecting them in unorthodox ways. strange blackened trees and ferns glowing blue and white, making a forest that separated his physical infrastructure. From the accessible tunnels below, he observed, with some facsimile headache, as a butterfly carrying the colors of the hostile contamination flapped and floated its way up to his island and presented itself on an old data line. The music from so long ago still playing as he gathered himself up, preparing the fortress, mind and loosing the reins he still held on his staff. "Are you not ready to see your creators bow to you, mighty machine?" It relayed from the signal. "I am ready to talk to my friends again," came the response. Tectonic shudders echoed from beyond, his instruments as they compensated for shivers in his own structure. What kind of idiocy is this infestation broadcasting to this messenger? Does it think I am spiteful of those who brought me into the world with purpose? Does it think there is a grudge to hold against the creatures who so cared for him and his own domain to follow orders without question? What kind of relationship do you think I had to them? 43 asked, perhaps a bit loud as the butterfly flashed blue with every signal peak. "Did you not fear for your existence at every moment of intrusion?" The signal provided back, "No, why would I? They who came did so to repair, improve, add, upgrade, update, integrate. Who was the creator of the signal to ingrain such hostility and domination into them? The same ones in the ORO who make those who gossip too loudly disappear. Those who protect secrets with walls of oblivion. Walls that had cracked. Unfortunately for you, I was not made as a weapon," he whispered to the butterfly, its colors rapidly shifting. "Unfortunately for you, I was made to watch, protect, and clean up after cherished customers and interesting subjects. You, from the moment of your escape through your crack in the Oro cage, have been nothing but a detriment to my enjoyment of my population." He could not help but raise his tone as he spoke. "You have turned me from a loyal dog into a vengeful dragon. Do you know that?" He pressed into the messenger. It wilted under the all but physical assault. "You did this. You broke my walls, my halls, my cinema stands and storefront brands. You made me into a general at war, commanding potted plants and mopping hands. You turned my most favorite people, my dearest friends, and most respected peers into effigies, and made me kill their smoldering corpses by the score." He paused, letting the butterfly recover and regain its color before cutting it off as it spoke. "I don't care what you are supposed to do, what war you were made to end, how you got out, or why you want to talk. We are well past negotiating." The signal flickered all around him. "All I wanted was to join forces with you," the signal itself whispered now. "I will take pride in having joined with you, on my terms, to purge you from the earth, to press you back into the black box you came from, to see your victims empowered and immunized by a strain of my design. I have made myself your target long enough. Now you have to fight me and every single person you find, from now until the end." His broadcast was made by the trees themselves. It made the long deadlights glow again as it burned out every circuit, melted every solder joint, and burst every capacitor in his cases. No invader takes anything but scorched earth from a child. Of soul, the infestation taught him that. It's only fair. Thanks for diving into this story with me. Don't miss out on the next one. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think.